everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IRSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Thursday, October 24th. It's the Navy preview show. I never look forward to this week, Jamie. I don't like it. I don't like thinking about how Notre Dame's going to defend the option. I'm just going to be honest about that. I don't like this week. But it is interesting. I mean, there's been a lot of bangers over the years between Notre Dame and Navy, inexplicably. We'll talk about that, but we'll talk about how Notre Dame's going to defend this team. Is Navy overrated? Right? It's a question that I'm asking myself just based on their schedule. Right? I think we have a lot less information about how good Navy is playing a later game this year than in normal years. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how Notre Dame might defend them and whether Notre Dame or Navy's passing game can be more effective than other teams because of personnel matchups. We'll talk about that. Talk about Notre Dame's offense against Navy's defense and how we see the game going. And of course, your questions and comments. So thank you everyone for tuning into this show. If you like what you hear today, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell soon, whatever it is. We're going to go live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And as always, the show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing. With holiday season fast approaching, ESQ has you covered for all your parties and gifting. Founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang, you've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best, from a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for galas and holiday events. Check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Give yourself and your loved ones the gift of style. Jamie, how you doing? Connor Nepper says, go Irish 31-10. Are you on board with that? You on board with 31-10, Jamie? That's not what I'm going with, but I'm curious.
I would be surprised if Navy only scored 10 points.
I would be very surprised. I'm not predicting that. Let's just to be clear.
I don't think it's like crazy to think that Notre Dame would win by that much, but I don't think like 10 points. I mean, that would be a phenomenal game from the Notre Dame's defense if that was the case.
Yeah.
And I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Yeah, that's great. I love to hear that, Jamie. I love to hear that you're doing well, and that's what we want.
Also, drop Navy from the schedule. Drop Navy from the schedule.
Oh,
let me just get that out of the way.
No, whoa.
I've been like this for years. Everybody knows.
Let's talk about it. No. Let's talk about it. This is I did not think we would go there, but let's go there. I think it's topical, right? There's always been a conversation about Navy being on the schedule, military academies, just generally. Tell us why. I mean, I think people generally know the reasons for it, but why do you feel like that?
I don't mind if they had Navy on the schedule. They did some Shamrock Series type stuff with Navy.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good thing. They get those kind of games with Navy. Do some kind of like events around those kind of things to kind of like pay respect to the series, and then also pay respect, obviously, to what they did for Notre Dame, during World War II and all that. But like this idea that it's like they have to keep playing this series when this it's not the same as Notre Dame USC. It's not. So it's not the same. It's also like it's just one of those things because of the type of offense that they play, which is different this year, and obviously we'll get into that, but like it's still one of those ones where it's like you got to completely throw out your defense for a week and then just do this every year. And by the way, also thanks to the administration for also the scheduling army, so they have to do that twice this year. But like it's just I don't think that's like one of those things. It's like obviously they're not thinking about that as part of the schedule, but it's like it's one of these things. It's a good story that Navy is good this year and that they're ranked. Yet it is one of those like no-win situations because Notre Dame kills them. They'll be, Navy overrated, whatever. Just like they're not going to get credit
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
If it's a close game, it's like, man, they almost like, well, that's not good. Like, like it, and then obviously if Notre Dame loses, it's a disaster. Any year they lose to Navy is a disaster. So I just, what's the incentive? What are we doing here in terms of trying to progress with actual, when we're talking about putting the football program first? It's obviously not about that at all. It's obviously, I know why they're keeping it going, but I've just always thought that they needed to drop Navy from the schedule as an annual
Right.
rivalry. If they want to get every 3 years, hey, okay.
Yeah.
But no, every year I just think it's and I compared most Navy games that Notre Dame plays to getting your kids to try to eat vegetables. No one wants to do it. No one wants to watch that game
without the benefit of it being good for you.
Yeah, right. So it's it's also not a game that like people are going to go, and the only way people will watch this game that aren't casual fans are, their only way they're going to watch it is if Navy might upset Notre Dame.
Right, like if it's late in the fourth quarter and they're tied,
That's
or
the
Navy's
only
up.
way people. Otherwise, no one's going to be like, man, I really want to watch that Notre Dame Navy game.
Yeah,
never. No one's ever said that who hasn't been a Notre Dame or Navy fan.
Right, and it's like on the off chance that they're undefeated like they are this year, there's no juice, right? There's no juice about it. No one will look at that game and say, if Notre Dame wins, so it's funny. Rajon put in the chat. He said Notre Dame 38, Navy 24. Like that's actually my exact score pick. So good job by Rajon. Like if Notre Dame wins 38-24, I don't think anybody will. I don't think anyone will give them credit for that. Like they're not going to jump in the rankings for beating Navy, right? It won't hurt them, obviously. It's not like they're going to like. I think. Do you think it's kind of hard to like? What do you think gets more juice, like beating Louisville or beating Navy, right? And Louisville's 4-3 now, but like at the end of the year, will people look at the beating Louisville as a better win than beating like Navy? Like it's hard to say, especially if Navy only wins. Like let's say Navy only loses this one game. Let's say they beat Army. Like would people be like, yeah, like would it be A&M, Louisville, Navy, or would it be A&M, Navy? Like I just don't know that it carries any sort of juice. And it's like again, an undefeated team in late October, and no one really cares. Like no one really talks about it, and that's just the whole thing, right? There's no point in scheduling someone where, it'd be one thing if it was Pitt or like Boise State. I mean, Notre Dame's added Boise State next year, so that's good. But like, it'd be one thing if it was, I think beating Boise State this year would be a big deal. Like if Notre Dame was playing Boise State this week, that would be a pretty big deal. It's not now with Navy. And so it's just, there's no need to play the game that way. And it's like you said, we're now in the playoff era. Like college football is completely different now. I think they have to think about it in a different way. You can't just schedule the way that you have with the idea of these traditions. Navy's not trying to be a national team, right? Which maybe to their credit, right? I don't know. It's their institution, and the institution is the institution. But Notre Dame has to think about it in a different way, and it's not a fear. Notre Dame hasn't lost to Navy in a long time, and I don't think it's a fear of losing to them. I just think it doesn't help. It's not helping your team. It's not helping your program. And if you're doing things that actively hurt your program from a football standpoint, I think you have to look at that and say we shouldn't be doing that, right? Notre Dame doesn't need to be in the business of placating, fans, backlash. Like there's never backlash when you're no one's gonna have backlash if you're like a good program and you're winning, right? And so I just don't think this aids Notre Dame in their quest to be a top football program.
It doesn't. And the other thing is too, is that everyone knows that Notre Dame isn't going to be independent forever. That is not going. It's not going to stay that way. They, you know what? Kudos to the administration for being able to hang on to it this long. They've obviously had to make deals along the way with like the Big East and then the ACC to kind of like allow that to kind of like keep that like semi-independence. But the way things are going, it's not, whether it's Super League, them join the Big Ten or whatever, like that is going to happen sometime, probably in the near future. And so then what is going to happen? Like, you're probably going to be forced to drop, not Navy anyway. So I guess like maybe that's what they're waiting for, and just like, okay, this is our way to do it. But I don't know. I just think it's like, it's such a weird thing that Navy, like even Navy too, like I actually feel terrible for how like all the things have worked out for like Navy and so many of these schools that are on like the fringe of like, hey, you're not really good enough to even get into like the Big 12, the leftover Big 12 teams.
Yeah.
So like, the AAC 3 years ago, they had Cincinnati, SMU, Houston, UCF. I mean, these aren't like prestige programs, but they're pretty good teams. Like, Cincinnati, obviously that year was very good, and you can build a really good program there. And they've had a lot of success. SMU might be one of the best teams of the ACC this year, right?
Yeah.
Like Houston definitely can be like very good. Like you can recruit there, and like UCF the same, right? They've had a lot of success. So like just taking those 4 teams out of the league, and then if you don't get like a good Tulane team, or some of these other teams are like dropping back down, then the league is terrible, right? Because there's really not like, there's 14 teams in the league, 9 of them are ranked 99th or lower. Like that's pretty horrible in F plus. Right. Sorry, FEI and S plus. Like that's not good. Like that's not a good thing for Navy. It's like before they were in like arguably like that mid-major. It's like if you won the AAC, it's like, well, they would get that top seed, for the group of 5. Now it's like, are they better than the Sun Belt? It's debatable. Like that's where they're at right now.
Do you think, okay, so let's get into the kind of this game then. Do you feel like Navy is overrated just generally, right? Like this isn't are they not a threat? I think we would both agree they are definitely a threat to Notre Dame, right? I think they're kind of a threat. I think Notre Dame specifically, I don't want to get into other teams, but just I think they are a threat to Notre Dame, and I think they're a real threat to Notre Dame. Notre Dame could absolutely lose this game, okay? So let's get that out of the way. Do you think Navy is overrated in terms of how good their offense is?
A little bit, because they've played really bad defenses. Right. They played really no good defenses. So that's just kind of, what it is, right? Like they just haven't had to face teams that are good. Like that's just how the schedule has worked out for them. And I mentioned the thing about all those other teams leaving, and that's part of it for sure, right? So the defense they played ranked 70th, 102nd, 109th, 118th, and 130th in DF plus. That's like Notre Dame playing Purdue.
Yeah, I was going to say it'd be like if Notre Dame played Purdue every week. It would be just like that.
And so, you totally give credit for them. I think they're a good offense. Like I think it is a good offense, but they are like, if you look at their like rankings of like kind of where things are, like they're 12th in passing success rate, and they are really good at throwing the football compared to where they've been. But maybe it would look a little bit better if they played at least 2 decent defenses. They have like,
you would at least know, right? You would have more information, right?
Yeah, like they haven't. You're 6 games in the season, you played nobody, right? Like in terms of a decent defense. Like Memphis's offense is pretty good. Like that's one pretty good offense they played, but that's it. They played one pretty good offenses and no pretty good defenses. Like that's it. Like that's just kind of where it's at for them. So I mean, do I think they'd be 22 of 23 in the red zone if they played, really good teams every week? No. So do I think they're overrated in terms of, like, are they a top 25 team? They probably don't deserve to be ranked as a top 25 team, even though they've dominated the teams. Like they're winning by an average of, 4 touchdowns basically each week, but they've played such bad teams that it's like hard to kind of, it's hard to overlook that. And I think where they're at, I think they're 47th. They're 47th in F plus, right? So that seems pretty right. To me, they're like a top 40-ish team, but that means also if you're a top 40 team, you can beat almost anybody.
Right.
Which
On any
that's how
given
they
day.
should.
Yeah.
That's how they should be viewed. They should be viewed as like they are a dangerous team. They can beat you. They've played you can't deny that they have dominated their competition. They've played like almost mistake free all season, and that obviously that is super rare. But they've also faced like close to zero adversity the whole season.
I was
And that
literally just about to
yeah.
say that. Yeah, like it's a huge deal. When have they ever, like, everything they call kind of works? Everything they want to do is working. And what
Yeah.
happens when that isn't the case, right?
Yeah.
When you have to actually grind, like it is interesting how like they're so explosive in the passing game that we don't know that they can actually grind out drives like Navy is used to doing. Like you've mentioned it a couple of times, their time of possession is way low, and it's low because they're so explosive. But like the way, like we go into these games thinking about, short possessions, and Notre Dame's, they're only going to get 4, maybe 4 true possessions in the first half or whatever it might be. And like that hasn't been the case for Navy so far this year because of the way their offense has been. So, they've been so explosive and they've been able to just move the ball up and down the field fairly easily. So we don't know about this team's ability to actually grind the ball. And so that's just kind of an unknown. I don't want to say it's definitely not going to happen. Maybe they are planning to do that. But then if they do want to go try to grind it, does that take away from the identity that they've had that has allowed them to be the offense that they've been so far this year? So that's kind of an open question. On the flip side, something that I've been thinking about is I talked on the last show about how when Navy wants to throw, it's like that's obviously advantageous for Notre Dame because that's their best part of their defense is their pass defense. But I'm curious about the personnel that Notre Dame's going to have in the game when Navy wants to throw on like first and second down. Whereas like they're running so many things, like they're running wheels where they're flooding areas of the field. They're putting the types of players in stress that could be a weakness for Notre Dame. So like they're putting linebackers in stress, like they're putting safeties in stress, like they're putting stress in areas where it's like Notre Dame's not going to have Jordan Clark out there. They may not have Christian Gray out there. They might not have Levernon Moore out there. Like they're definitely going to have Watts and Schuler out there, right? But we don't know how Notre Dame is going to defend Navy in terms of personnel. And it's like now maybe I like Navy's passing offense if you're running a wheel route against like Drake Bowen or you're running a real route against Jaden Osbury, right? Like maybe that's a favorable matchup for Navy. I'm kind of curious where you come out on that, like how you process that when thinking about how this game could go.
I mean, I think they are going to do some of that stuff, but I also think that like if it's one of their tight ends running a wheel route against Jaden Osbury, like I like Jaden Osbury to cover him.
I definitely don't like their tight ends in that situation.
Yeah, like
right.
But even their backs, right? Like I don't think like those backs aren't. I mean, I think their backs are good, right? But I don't think like you're going to get like if it's a slot back, that guy's going to be running it against a safety. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I also think that like what the beauty of what Notre Dame has on the back end is even without Ben Morrison, which is crazy that you don't have Ben Morrison, but they still have like versatility to say like we can try this here and we can do this here. We can move this guy here, right? Because I think what will probably happen in this game, and I don't know for sure, but I think Jordan Clark is going to still play a lot. Like Thomas Harper played 12 snaps last year
Yeah.
in this game, like, you know, Notre Dame's nickel. No way Jordan Clark's playing 12 snaps in this game. Like,
Yeah.
they're going to find him. They're going to get him to play because he's such a smart player. And he's a guy that, you know, they like to run screens and stuff. I mean, he's been killing screens all year. So whether he's going to be like, maybe he's going to play outside corner in this game, right? Like, that's something that he did with Bracey in 2022, right? And obviously, you know, Bracey, I think, was, you know, a fine player and good perimeter defender, but like, I think Clark is more physical than
Right, for sure.
Bracey and kind
I
of
mean, to that point, Leonard Moore is more physical than Ben Morrison is.
He is. He is. And Leonard Moore has been a very good run defender. Now, it's a different thing playing Navy,
for sure.
And there's all that other kind of stuff too. But it's like, if they don't feel comfortable there, they should have other options. And that's something where you could maybe see, you know, Rod Hurd playing corner there, right? And where I don't think you want to get, so, you know, Navy's got the one kid who's really, you know, been great for them.
Chapman?
No, Heidenreich.
Oh,
right?
got it.
Heidenreich, but Chapman's a fast kid too, right? He's a, you know, a small guy, whatever. But with him, they've done more stuff. They run those wheel routes or whatever. But that's something I don't think, like, I think Notre Dame should be able to kind of cover them. That's that Heidenreich has been more of a problem, you know, for everyone each week, and they throw it to him short and long. Like, they can do all kind of things. And I think you want to have probably a true corner on him as much as possible. But I think that, you know, Notre Dame can kind of mix and match kind of what they do with some of the stuff. And the other thing is that what you at least hope is that the difference between a lot of these other teams playing Navy and Notre Dame playing Navy is that when they drop back, there's a chance that that first guy's not going to be open, right? Which he is most of the time against these other teams. But it's just one of those things where I would say, yeah, there's going to be sometimes they're going to throw to that guy anyways. But I don't think, I bet there's very few times, I mean, at least out of the film that I've watched, were very few times where Blake Horvath, their quarterback, who's having an outstanding year, has had to go to a second read.
Right. To this point, I do, because this was something I noticed watching them, is a lot of their pass plays are explosives designed to a person.
Yes.
Now, they're well designed, right? Like,
oh yeah,
I watch them. I'm
very
like,
well
this is good stuff,
it's
right?
good
Like,
stuff.
I'm thinking this is really good, but it is designed to go to a certain guy, and if that guy isn't open, then what? What do you do, right?
And usually that guy's running, right?
Right,
Like,
and usually he's running. You know, he's trying to get out of there, and it's like, what do you do if that's taken away, right? Like, Notre Dame has been very good at that, right? They're just very organized back there. They don't have people running free, and they haven't had people running free. Like, I do think that I'm prepared, just myself, for Navy to be for Navy to come out looking real good on offense, because they have saved things for Notre Dame. There is an adjustment. Notre Dame has if you're ever going to get Notre Dame, I mean, multiple teams have gotten over on Notre Dame on their first drive, right? So it's just like, that's when it looks good, right? Or early in the game, right? They have something. Once Notre Dame gets their adjustment in, usually that's the end of it, right? I mean, it's been the end of it pretty much every week, with save for probably Louisville, right? And even Louisville slowed down a ton in the second half of their game, right? They were able to make some incredible plays in the second half to move the ball, but generally speaking, your opening script had better hit, and then you got to hope that you're holding Notre Dame's offense, because you're just not getting much after that. And that's been true kind of throughout throughout the season. So, but just like to your point, when Navy's calling a play, they want this specific wheel to this specific player. They want this leak, this Y leak to Chapman coming on the backside. They want this guy up the seam against the safety who's coming on the run play. They know how to target players, and they know how to target specific areas of the field. The other part is, and this is something I'm curious about, is how does Notre Dame mix coverages against an offense like this? I'm curious how they're able to do that, because it's just like you don't want to mix a ton of coverages because the types of formations that they can get into,
And you're
they
going to
can
have to
very
play a lot
easily.
of man in the game, which Notre Dame plays, but you're going to, yeah, it's not you can't go out there and do what Notre Dame does on a regular week. You can't.
Right.
It's going to be very different than that. But I don't know. I just think one of the things that is there, because obviously they're throwing it deep quite a bit, right? They're throwing it deep quite a bit, and that's his Horvath's average depth target is 13 yards. So they throw like intermediate and stuff too. Like they do a lot of that, right? So that's something I think you got to watch. But there's also plays where like their guards have to block Riley Mills and Howard Cross, and you got to stay blocking them. And those guys don't stay blocked that much when it comes to pass rush. So I just think that there's just those kind of elements there that Navy really hasn't had to deal with, because they just are playing against teams that don't have that there, right? So I would be surprised if Navy doesn't, like, they're going to score points in this game. They're going to probably have some drives too where, Notre Dame fans are nervous because they're like, oh man, they just like, they hit this big play and then they hit another big play. Now all of a sudden they're in the red zone and whatever, right? Like, I think that's going to happen. And it's going to be about like, Notre Dame kind of like, oh, they think they have something else set up and Notre Dame blows it up. And that's going to be so important in this game. Like exactly like what happened in the Georgia Tech game where they hit the 60-yard play and you're like, they're rolling. And literally, as like Louis Riddick was saying, like, that's the kind of play that they need if they want to get back into this game. And then right after that, it's Jaden Osbury attacking for loss. It's Riley Mills sack, blocked field goal. Like that's just, and that is very much what happens with Notre Dame's defense all the time. And obviously, Navy's offense is, you don't get a lot of negative plays against them, but that's something that you hope that Notre Dame will be able to get done in this game, because they're going to have to, because you can't have them if they're in third and short all the time. That's when they just can kill you, and that's when they can kill you with the play action, all that too.
Right. CFP Hertz is asking about Onye. To our knowledge, he's not with the team currently, like not practicing. So that's as far as we know. Beyond that, we don't have information on him. But other than the fact that it does not appear to be that he's with the team. He hasn't been with the team for the last couple of weeks. Let's see. Rajon says, does this Navy team rely less on staying on schedule than previous Navy teams? They've been more explosive in the passing game. Interestingly, I wanted to ask about Blake Horvath and your opinion of him. Like, I think he is less dynamic than some of their best teams. I'm curious to get your opinion on this. Like, I view just Keenan Reynolds and Malcolm Perry as more dangerous individuals than Blake Horvath is. I think their passing plays are a result of him hitting guys running free, basically.
Yeah.
They're scheming these guys. I don't think he's individually making plays himself. Now, look, he's a good football player. I'm not.
Yeah. Oh,
I don't want to take it away.
Yeah.
He's a very good football player, and he's obviously, like, you can't just plug anyone in there and they're going to do what he's doing, right? He's elusive. He's a good runner, but I don't see him as dynamic as Keenan Reynolds and Malcolm Perry were, right? Whereas like those guys, you get them in the open field, it's like, yeesh, they can really do damage. I feel like he's good enough to where if they're manipulating Notre Dame, he can do damage, but just like I don't view him as like a home run guy as much as like I would Reynolds and or Perry. Just wondering kind of how you viewed him.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same. I mean, I know he did break a 90-yarder against Memphis, and he reached 20.8 miles per hour on that. So, I mean, the guy can run.
Right.
But yeah, I wouldn't put him at the same like the Perry was anytime that guy you were like, man, he just might go. Like that was very much like that. And I think Reynolds had more. I would say Reynolds had more juice as well. But
I bet put it like this, like Kyron Williams has a 90-yarder.
Yeah,
I would put him in a separate category of like
then Jeremiah Love.
than like Jeremiah Love. That's
yes,
kind of how I see it.
Great comparison there. I think, yeah, and also too, like, I mean, props to Horvath, who's obviously gotten better, but like, he was a 40% passer in high school. He ran a triple option offense, right? Like he ran actually like Navy's old offense in high school. That's what he ran, and so he's obviously improved, and there's that part of it, and he's played really, really well, but. Yeah, I think a lot of it is so much as like they're just scheming up teams against teams that aren't good too, and they're just have had success with it. So it's you just have to think like, well, maybe there's going to be plays where those guys are open, but Notre Dame's guys have the makeup speed to get back and make those plays, or they're not running free against Notre Dame because they have it covered. Like, so I think that's kind of like going to be like the big kind of question with them, but they're not. Yeah, it's not. They don't have to stay on schedule because they've done it, but which is why it's going to be so interesting if they get into a drive where it's like they haven't had too many of those drives where they've had to just like execute for like 15 plays. Like, first of all, that's a hard for any offense to do, to execute that many times to be able to do it, which is why you want explosives. So I don't know if Notre Dame can limit some of those explosives and do that. And like it always is too, it's always going to be about adjustments with Notre Dame and what they do to kind of switch things up and, confuse Navy's blocking schemes, that kind of stuff, and how they tackle. And obviously Notre Dame has tackled pretty darn well this year.
Yeah, they've been really good on that side of the ball. Notre Dame wants to limit them, but no one wants limits, right? And with VSR Media, you have no limits on what your media company can do, right? There's no limit on that sort of thing, and so that's what the move you got to make, right? I think that was the problem with Navy. There was a limit on their passing game and their explosiveness, and in the past, and they made a change. And it's kind of like the change that you can make going with VSR Media for your media company. Of course, founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadbazadeh, VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com and mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Rajon mentioned the score prediction, 38-24. He said Notre Dame's going to run for 250 plus. I got to tell you, Jamie, it's in play. I mean, a huge rushing number, I believe, is in play for Notre Dame in this one. They gave up some real yards on the ground to Memphis, and kind of the one really good offense that they played this year. Or I shouldn't say really good, comparable offense to Notre Dame this year, and that's without a running quarterback like Riley Leonard, without the explosiveness of someone like Jeremiah Love and or Jadarian Price. I feel like this matchup for Notre Dame is a good one, kind of all fronts. Just kind of curious about how you feel about Notre Dame playing offense against Navy this week.
I think Notre Dame should score a ton of points on them. I don't think that yeah, they haven't been good versus the run. Obviously, like, Memphis just ran it all over them.
Yeah.
They averaged 7.2 yards per carry, 274. They 8 runs of 10 plus yards, and the backs and the quarterback broke 15 tackles in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame's guys are pretty good at breaking tackles and making these guys miss and doing things. So like, I just think that's like, they haven't faced guys like Love and Price and Leonard and have to tackle them. So yeah, 250 plus is 100% in play. Like, I think it should be an expectation that really, like, because they're 84th in EPA per rush. Like, they're not good playing the run. And like I said, they haven't played good teams, and they haven't been good playing the run. 105th in rushing success rate. Like, that just normally does not bode well. And I know obviously Notre Dame's line isn't kind of what it's been, but I don't know how much it's going to matter, because I don't think, like, Navy's front, or they're obviously not that good. And like, I mean, do I think Navy's going to try to blitz like a ton? Yes. Like, I imagine that they will. And that's always been Newberry's MO. Is like,
Right.
I mean,
right.
think about that 2022 game where they're getting killed, and then he just like, hey, we're just going to blitz it, and we're just going to stop doing it. Well, I blame it, I mean, partially on Drew Pine. Didn't handle it well, but like, a lot of it was like, I think Tommy Rees just like choked in the second
Right.
half of that game.
Right.
Like, I think if they do that in this game, I think Notre Dame will kill them doing that. Like, they will just be able to just be like, they'll literally just throw like, little leak passes to the back, and then like those guys can take it to the house. Like, so I don't think and they give up a ton. They give up explosive plays on passing game too. And yeah, they play bad offenses. So I even their guys who are their best guys, they've won. Deshaun Peel, the kid who got the 2 pick sixes, he's a good corner. Like, he's a good player, but like, Rayon Lane, he is a good player for them, but he's good at very like what he is, like playing downhill, and he like forces fumbles, and he's like a super aggressive guy. But he's been cooked in coverage when he's against Jane Thomas and Jane Greathouse. And not that those guys aren't good players, they are, but that's not like getting cooked by Jackson Smith and Jigba. You know what I mean? Like, he can't cover the guys that Notre Dame has. He hasn't shown he has, and obviously he hasn't been tested by too many guys this year. So I just think there's just too many matchups that Notre Dame can win, that if they come out and they like execute like pretty well, I don't see them like not scoring a ton of points against Navy. Like, Memphis just basically like, they just got stops when it was like red zone. They got a couple stops in the red zone were big, and they got a couple turnovers that were big. So Notre Dame, obviously doesn't turn the ball over, and they just kind of do what they do. Like, I think they're going to score points. And I also don't think that, I don't think that it's going to be like where Memphis was chasing points the whole game.
Yeah.
And there might be a point in time where Notre Dame is chasing points. It could happen, but I don't think it's going to be like, man, we better score 48 to win this game. I don't see it going that way.
I remember in that 2021 season, right? Was it 20? Oh, no. 2020, when Notre Dame went to North Carolina, and it was a situation where North Carolina came out gangbusters, and they scored on their first 2 possessions. And Notre Dame answered on their first 2 possessions. It was like 14-14. And then Notre Dame's defense eventually figured it out. And then the offense, kind of took it from there. I think a similar thing's going to happen in this game. I believe it'll be like 14-14. I think Navy will score on like their first 2 possessions, and I think Notre Dame will answer. Now the kind of the caveat to that is, and look, this could happen in Navy as well. If Notre Dame turns the ball over early, right, that's when it can get a little bit shaky, because now you're kind of like, I think there's plays available to be made. Like, you can obviously make plays against Navy. There's going to be tons of opportunities, but like if you get down and you're turning the ball over, and then it's like, ugh, like now we're chasing, and you don't want to be chasing against this team. It's because then they can make it difficult on you there. That's the one thing where it's like some teams, like Georgia Tech, right? Like Notre Dame turns it over and they go down 7-0 early, and it's like, well, you just come back, right? Like Georgia Tech with their backup quarterback, they're not going to. You feel confident, right? And there's a lot of games like that. But with this one, it's like if it starts trending the wrong way, you can really start to press as a football team, just because of their style of play, and they can just they can grind out first down, not grind out first downs, but like, oh, they get this good play call, got them on like a 3rd and 5, and like you're constantly in like 3rd and 4. It's like, can we get off the field? We get off the field, can't get off the field. Like, that's how it happens. That's how it can happen. But just on paper, I just feel like there's so many ways for Notre Dame to consistently hurt Navy. And a big part of it has nothing really to do with scheme, right? Other than putting them in at disadvantageous situations where you spread them out a little bit. It's light box, and now you can run Leonard. You can run your backs. You can get the ball out on screens. You can be athletic that way. You're more physically talented on the outside, right? There haven't been that many weeks where Notre Dame is just physically better than their opponent. I think this happens to be one of them on when Notre Dame's on offense. And so it's just like, this could be a huge rushing game. I mean, this could be, like you said, 300 plus. I think it's in play. I think a huge game is on the table for someone like Jeremiah Love. There's a 60-yard run sitting out there for Jadarian Price. There's like 10 for 132 for Riley Leonard sitting out there. And it's just like, on paper, consistently, it just, I think it's more likely for Notre Dame because they have the better players. That's the other part.
Yeah, and I think what I would say too is that on offense, you can win more with scheme. Like, scheme can get you a lot of things on offense. You could be overmatched, but make up for it with scheme. And I think with defense, there's only so much scheme, how far scheme can go.
Yeah.
It just really, it's the truth. You better have guys. Like, it's got to be like, if you don't have, it's like, yes, X's and O's, Jimmy's and Joe's matter on defense more, especially at DB. Like, because those are the guys that prevent those long touchdowns from happening, whether it's in coverage or the guys who got to make those open field tackles on guys where that's what I don't think when people think about open field tackling, they're always thinking, oh, it's your angle and you got to do this and you got to like cut the guy in half and you got to do all this kind of stuff too. They don't realize how much, like, if you aren't fast, you can't get to the point where you have to slow down to make the tackle,
Right.
because you're always chasing. And that's why you just see teams that are overmatched. They have real problems, tackling. So I would say that was the biggest thing with Purdue. I was like, man, they don't have enough guys. Like, and that's why they just couldn't, like, their Mike linebacker was a defensive end playing Mike linebacker. I was like, this guy, he's not catching Jeremiah Love. Like, so Navy's they're smaller too. So that's another thing. So they're a little bit faster because of that. But like, they're also smaller. Like, you kind of like, this is the game where you're like, holy crap, Anthony Knapp just bullied this dude, because you're going against a guy who's, 250 instead of 290, right? Like, it makes a difference.
Yeah. And you can, suddenly Bo Collins is so much better. Like, suddenly Jaden Harrison is like a big problem. Rajon says Jordan Faison on reverse or whatever. Maybe just a screen ball is going to be good enough. And not just that, but you're also playing on a fast track in MetLife. It's also like that stadium's got a pretty bad injury history.
Yes, that
Which
doesn't
which
feel great about.
you don't like that.
No.
You just don't like that. And by the way, like I mean, low key, that's another reason. If you're going to be playing your away games at MetLife on a regular basis against this team, then maybe that's a good enough reason in itself not to do it.
Yeah.
Don't put your team in a bad situation like that. Um, it's unfortunate, but it is one of those things. What types of passes do you see? And we've talked about a little bit about the screen game that Notre Dame can get on Navy, but what kind of passing game do you think? Like kind of what they've been doing? Like I guess I get well, here's a better way to put it. Like, is this a Mitchell Evans is gonna break out kind of game? I feel like everyone's kind of waiting for that.
Yeah, everybody's definitely waiting for that. I mean, and it could be that too, because that's the other thing. They're gonna have guys because of size wise, they're gonna have guys who's like going to cover him who are just so much smaller than he is, where this is the kind of game where he just like shrugs off a dude and then all of a sudden he runs for like 20 yards after the catch because he has that. So I think, that kind of thing is in play with the tight ends for sure. Um, we talked about, Tuesday about how this is like definitely like a slot game. Like this is a slot game. They play, um, their nickel player is a hybrid guy, right?
Mm,
He's basically a linebacker. He's an undersized linebacker. Like
yeah.
that's not a guy you want to have in coverage against the slot, and that forces them to put some of those safeties in slot, like a guy like Lane. And if you get Lane and you have him in coverage, that's a guy who he gets beat. Oh, he gets beat with speed. He's just one of these guys. He's like super over aggressive. You might get him on like an extra move. You might get him like being too aggressive with his bad eyes. Like,
Mm.
so I think you're going to see a lot of stuff over the middle of the field. Would be my guess is you're going to see a lot of stuff over the middle field in this game for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I like those matchups. It's so interesting with the Mitchell Evans thing. It just seems to me like he needed a more time with the ACL. That's all I can
Yeah, I'm
make of it.
sure he did.
That's
Yeah,
all I can make of it because it's just he was just so much more effective. And the fact is they're not going after him. The offense in itself is not, trying to push to him, right? They're not going out of their way to try to design things for him, right? And that kind of tells me how they feel or they must know about like how he is physically. Like I think he was a much bigger part of the game plan last year and he isn't this year, which, whatever. It is what it is. It's just it's just something that is apparent over time. Um, Joshua Finn's talking about deep sideline, tight end smash, quick screen to love. Interesting. Something they did in this last game that I've seen, and you've probably seen it as well. The 49ers did this, and I think it was Louisville who they have him in the shotgun, right? They have him next to Leonard in the shotgun, and then they motion him out just directly sideways to get that width. The 49ers do this with McCaffrey all the time. And I saw Louisville doing it kind of like in some of their games against Georgia Tech, and then they did it on kind of like an out route to the back on their first possession after the kickoff return fumble. And I thought, man, that's like that really puts that linebacker in a bind. And if Navy's going to be in a man defense or like against pressure or something like that is really just utilizing Jeremiah Love in a really kind of good way. I feel like there's so much there for him in the passing game that is just untapped right now.
yeah,
Um, I just like that's another one where it's like what you keep talking about the arrow route, right? They
oh
haven't done
yeah.
that yet. They haven't done a wheel route with him yet, and I feel like that's all kind of just sitting there
I mean,
waiting.
they've smoked Navy with those angle routes too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like,
I think they got Estime in 22 on that. Did they hit him last year for this? I can't remember.
they got him in 22 for a big play. I they leaked him out on it was a third down where he was out to the flat,
Yes.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
had that too, right? Like that's just an area, because the other thing is like they don't blitz. Newbury hasn't blitzed as much. Um, but I just kind of feel like he's going to be looking at it like, well, they got this young offensive line. Like they're going to try to blitz a lot. And I mean, I would, if I was playing Notre Dame's line too, I would just be like, well, let's just take our chances. You're going in this game. Newbury isn't a coach that is like, hey, we're playing this to play it safe. That's the other reason too why I think that's part of the reason why he hired Drew Cronick to be his offensive coordinator, because he doesn't want to play like, hey, the Ken Niumatalolo, like, hey, we got to do this in order to win the game. I don't think he wants to play that style, because that's not how he coaches on defense either, right? Like, so they're going to be aggressive and try to create plays and try to create those turnovers too, where they're stealing possessions. So I think that's like something that they're going to do, but that leaves them obviously vulnerable in those situations. And I mean, even if you're talking about just stuff like just the average like check down kind of stuff to Love, like even when he's not open, like he wasn't open on one of those ones to against Georgia Tech, and he turns it into like a 15-yard gain, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he just has that ability.
It's funny how, like, I just think he's one of the, and I've said this before, and I think I've said it on a previous show. I think he's of the recent good backs, right? So, let's go to Adams, Procise, um, like Adams, Procise, Dexter Williams, Kyron Williams, Audric Estime. I feel like Jeremiah Love, like the tools wise, he might have more than all of them, but there's like the numbers don't match up. Like it's crazy how he
Well, he
can't
doesn't have the
stack the numbers.
line.
No, for sure. No, I get it. No, I trust me. This isn't a. It's just kind of crazy to me. Like he doesn't have a 100-yard game yet. Like what? Like how is that possible?
Yeah.
No, maybe he had one against NIU. Matter of fact, I think he did. But like just the one, right? Like so, it's just kind of mind-boggling to me that is in the case. But he's so talented. I mean, catching the little they threw him a check down and he just turns and Lewis Riddick was like, whoa, like he made an audible noise. So I don't know. I just think there's so much untapped with him that they can really get going. Envy Irish asks, do you think it was an error to show so many fakes last week? Could see a need to use them to steal those possessions in the academy games. So I think what Marcus Freeman said, and I'll just take it at his word, is he said that you don't save them because they're opponent specific. So there's nothing to save. There's something that Georgia Tech does and their punt return team that makes it so you install those fakes for that specific game. If you don't do them in this game, you're not doing them ever.
You're not doing them, yeah.
Right. And so I'll take him at his word on that. It makes sense to me. It does. And Marty Biaggi seems like the type of guy that like he has more than one, right? Like I think there's plenty more there. If anything, it helps you with just in your punt game period. Like it's much less likely that you're going to get a punt blocked when you've got something like that in your bag. So,
yeah, it slows down the rush. Absolutely. Yeah, like, well, I mean, whatever. This is just like a very specific thing of like when I was coaching high school, but like we played a team, this was just like the dumbest punt block of all time. I don't know why they did it, but this is what they did, where they would like frequently take their returner and like rush all 11 trying to block a punt.
yeah.
And maybe it worked for them against some stupid teams that were like, hey, we're not going to make it. But like literally, I was like, as soon as they do this, we're running this. Like we're just leaking out our tight end, and you're going to score a touchdown. And then they did it. And then we're like, we had a call, live for it, and we just did it. So, but that's not something you would ever run against anybody else. It was just very specific to that week. And another reason why you do it too is like, you said to slow down the rush, but you want the other teams to prepare. Like to do that. Lou Holtz was the king of that. Was like, hey, we're doing this now because we want the next team to prepare for it next week. One more thing to worry about, right? Like that is definitely like something that they're thinking about when they do it, right? So yeah, I just think it's important. I mean, I would have maybe saved the Buckner one. I just think like obviously you could do that in any week, right? But like or a lot of other weeks, right? But like I don't know. Like I did have a problem with it.
I mean, the Buckner one, like that's another one where it's like, if now everyone's going to be paying attention. If you have a field goal that you really don't want to get blocked, put Buckner as a holder.
Yeah,
because they're not going to try to block it when you got Buckner back there, right? They're all going to be sitting back waiting. So it's just something to consider. That stuff doesn't. Why'd you use it then? That doesn't bother me. It never has. All right, so I kind of gave my prediction. I said 38-24. I think Notre Dame's going to – I think it'll be 14-14 at one point. I think Notre Dame will pull away, and then I think Navy will kind of score after that. Where are you at with your prediction?
I'm predicting Notre Dame 42-24.
42-24. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of the same. We're in the same.
We're in the same, vicinity. I think it's what I think will happen is they're going to get a decent amount. Like they'll probably get 14 in the first half, Navy. And, maybe it's tight at half and Notre Dame maybe has like a small lead or something like that. And then I just think Notre Dame will ultimately pull away. And just because that's just the other thing about Notre Dame too, is that like they just get better on defense as the game goes along. And they seem to like also once the players start figuring stuff out, all of a sudden, hey, maybe you weren't getting a pass rush earlier on when they were doing play action, but now you kind of seen it just and felt what exactly it was like. And then all of a sudden those guys are winning and you get some sacks, you get them whatever, like you do some things to kind of get them behind there. And then, and like I said about we talked about the running. I just think Notre Dame's going to run on them for most of the game.
Yeah. I like I said, don't be surprised if Navy comes out and looks good on offense initially. Look, Navy's a good football team, right? And I think because they're a good football team, I think Notre Dame's going to be ready for them. Chief Brody says they will struggle against one of the academies. I actually agree with this, but I think it'll be the second one because so he says probably Army. I think it'll be the second one because I think once Notre Dame plays the undefeated academy team that really has their antennas up, I think that then it'll be like, Army's good and they're undefeated, but we dispatched the other one. And I think there's just kind of a natural, like, we took care of that already. So we'll be fine in this one. I think Notre Dame's attention is going to be a lot higher in this game.
I do think there's very likely they're going to be undefeated still in that game too. So
and they have a better defense, which makes it a different matchup as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So 38-24 Notre Dame. So all right, that'll do it. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is, we're going to go live. We'll be back on Saturday following the game. I am going to do so. I planned yesterday was last week was a weird week. So I was going to do a Friday show, but I didn't. But I'm going to do a Friday show tomorrow. So look out for that. Probably around 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. So and then we'll have the post game show on Saturday. So look for you then. All right, have a good one, everyone. Have a good rest of your Friday. Good weekend. Or I'm sorry, it's Thursday. Have a good Friday. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you after the game. Keep hitting and hustling.